Happy Tuesday, Hokie Nation. Welcome back to another edition of the TSL Basketball Show. As always, we're recording on Tuesday, February 17th, 2026 from the Tech Solutions studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Today's video is brought to you by Tech Solutions, a Washington Post top workplace winner in 2024 and 2025. We're always looking for talented and motivated individuals to join our team. Visit techsolutionsva.com/careers to learn more. That is techsolutionsva.com/careers. Remember to like, subscribe, and refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, Robert Bateman. As always, joined alongside me is the one and only Chris Coleman and our managing editor, David Cunningham. And behind the scenes is a man who is fingerless right now, Nick Brown, as he broke his finger on Friday. Hopefully he'll heal up quick, playing some hoops. All right, guys, so where we left off, the Hokies were struggling a little bit, but then they went down to Little John, took on Clemson, and it was a big road on the road for the Hokies.
I mean, they played really well. I thought it was arguably their most complete game of the season. They against a team like Clemson that was top 15 in adjusted defense. Hokies went down there, and I thought they really imposed their will for 40 minutes. Hit some big shots offensively. Shot 52% from the floor and from three. They played a really, really good basketball game. I thought they were going to have to take that Clemson game if they wanted to have a chance coming down the home stretch. And they took it. And they played really, really well. And I think everyone left that Clemson game going, okay, this team is a really good shot to do something. And then it kind of makes what happened on Saturday even more confusing, I guess.
Yeah, they shot way up in the efficiency ratings after that Clemson game, too. So it gave them a quad one win, but it wasn't just like – they won it by 10. Right, it wasn't like they won on the last second shot. They controlled the game. Their defensive efficiency rating jumped all the way up to 50th, which, had that held to the end of the season, would have been Mike Young's best defensive team at Virginia Tech. Even better than his two NCAA tournament teams. Offensively, they also took a big jump. When you score 76 against Clemson, as good as their defense is and the pace they play at, it's like scoring 80 to 85 against most teams. I thought that was the most efficient Virginia Tech's offense has executed as far as the ball not getting stuck, things like that. I thought that was the best they had played all year. Now, Clemson, it was interesting watching them play. They're a well-coached basketball team. They play good team basketball, particularly on the defensive end. They're not going to out-athlete you. I thought, if anything, Virginia Tech out-athleted them. So after watching the Clemson game and after seeing Florida State in person, even though Clemson has the better record, the matchups were entirely different. And I actually think Clemson was a better matchup for Virginia Tech than Florida State was.
Yeah, and I think Clemson uses so many guys. They play like a 10-man rotation almost. And I thought the Hokies did a really good job of kind of defending whoever came on the floor. There were three Clemson players, Ace Buckner, Carter Welling, and somebody else that combined for almost all their points, and they shot really, really well. But the rest of the team, we're talking like the other 6 or 7 guys, were a combined 5 for 25 from the floor, including R.J. Godfrey, including Justin Porter, 2 of their leading scorers. The Hokies did a really good job of shutting down the other guys. I thought it was a good defensive game. I thought it was a well-officiated game. Tech stayed out of foul trouble. And even when Amani Hansberry and Toby LeBlanc got in foul trouble a little bit towards the end, they were able to stay on the floor. And I thought the ball moved where it was supposed to go. And Amani Hansberry had that drive and kick late to Jalen Bedford. He hits a 3 in front of the Tech bench with like 2 minutes to go to basically ice the game. And again, complete performance. And I think it left a lot of Virginia Tech fans really excited about what was to come, given they played their butts off. Like that I watched every single game, been at almost every single game this year. And that was the first Virginia Tech road win over a ranked team since 2018-19 over NC State. First ranked road win of the Mike Young era. Yeah, that game. But probably the biggest road win of the Mike Young era, honestly. I mean, they have won on the road, but to beat a ranked team on the road is unique. And that was one of the most complete games I can remember for a couple of years now. Maybe dating back to how they finished the season in that 2022 year in the ACC tournament. They looked to me like an NCAA tournament team the way they played on Wednesday. And then they followed it up with Saturday.
Yeah, and I'll say one more thing about the Clemson game. I'm so happy for Jalen Bedford. He had big games, and they were all losses, and he finally got to celebrate after having a 20-plus point game, so I was happy for him.
Well, it was Carter Welling, Nick Davidson, and Ace Buckner that combined for 51 of Clemson's 66 total points. Funny enough, only 31 points out of Clemson's starters that entire game.
That was the same thing their previous game.
Yeah, Clemson's a team where they play so many guys that they went to Stanford and won by like 5 or 10 last week. And only got like 15 points from the starters. The bench scores a lot of their points, and they've got a lot of production there. So like being able to handle that, and like from a scouting perspective, understanding like we've got to know the 8th or 9th or 10th guy and be comfortable defending him. I thought Tech did a good job in that realm.
All right, well, let's fast forward to Valentine's Day, where Virginia Tech hosted Florida State. After leading by 3 at half, the Hokies were outscored by 26 in the second half to fall 92-69 to the Seminoles.
It was such an interesting second half. Florida State shot 78%, and you just don't see that. You don't see somebody shoot that well for a half ever.
You don't see him shoot that well in pregame warmups. Yeah.
I thought, Chris, you described it pretty well yesterday in your column. I didn't know that Tech didn't understand. Like Mike Young talked about it after the game. He's like, our guys understood the magnitude of the game, but I thought watching the game that Tech lacked a little bit of energy at times in the second half. Not like it didn't want to be out there playing, but I thought Florida State punched the Hokies in the mouth first and got downhill and drew some fouls, and it was a very choppy start to the second half.
After hardly any fouls being called in the first half.
I mean, there were like 8 or 10 fouls in the first half combined, and there were like 8 fouls in the first 5 minutes of the second half. And it's just like it becomes very choppy, and Florida State's attacking downhill and getting fouled and getting to the rim and either making a bucket or getting to the foul line. And it was the Seminoles slowly chipped away. And then Florida State had a run in the second half, over 5 minutes and 15 seconds. Florida State outscored Virginia Tech 21-3. That doesn't happen. And it's like, why did it happen? Well, Virginia Tech was kind of asleep at the wheel defensively, but I thought the Hokies let their defense or their offensive struggles impact their defense. Where like they were not scoring the ball. Florida State, I thought, did a really good job of kind of taking them out of rhythm when they had the ball. And then Florida State came down and was just throwing up everything. And Florida State got into a rhythm. And it's one of those things where when you're playing a team like this, a team that has only won 11 or 12 games on the year, better than the record indicates, because FSU's won like 5 of its last 6
5 of 7 now, I think.
Yeah, and beat Miami and played Duke close, and has played NC State close. Should have beaten UVA.
The other day, yeah.
I mean, this is a much better team, and you caught them on the wrong day, honestly. And it sucks because that's a quadrant 3 loss by 23 points. And it, as much as the Clemson win helped you, the Florida State loss hurts you.
Hurts you a little, even more maybe. But if you told me before the game that Tech would shoot 50% from 3-point range and have 3 more offensive rebounds than Florida State, I would have said they won the game. Saturday was my 30-year anniversary of my first time I ever went to a game in Castle Coliseum. Not to the exact date, but that mid-February Saturday game was my 30-year anniversary. My first one was number 10 for Virginia Tech versus number 1 UMass way back in 1996. So I wrote an article earlier this year that how about Virginia Tech always loses on my birthday game, and I guess it extends to anniversary games now too. So maybe that's when the bye weeks should be. But I think that's 30 years of having a very close-up view of major college basketball, and it's rare that I've walked away from a game amazed by something. I mean truly amazed as in how did that happen? And I have no reasonable explanation for it. The first one was that NC State game. NC State that year, they went to the NIT, so they were a solid team, but they weren't great. But they won 24 games. They were 34th in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency, and they scored 24 points on Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech had to do a lot right defensively in that game, but NC State had to do even more wrong. I mean, they shot 9 of 54 from the field and 2 of 28 from three-point range. 3 days after NC State scored 24 points against Virginia Tech, they scored 96 against UNC in the Dean Dome, right? Like, every now and then, once a decade or so, maybe once every 2 decades, you'll just have this game that doesn't make any sense. When Florida State shoots 78.3% in one half of basketball, and Virginia Tech's defense was not great. They had to do some bad things. But Florida State had to execute damn near perfectly. Like, there were some times where Virginia Tech's defense wasn't there. There were other times where Somerville, who's a 36% three-point shooter, after that game was probably 34% going into it. I mean, they were guarding him outside the three-point line, and Florida State didn't do anything. I mean, their offense wasn't moving, and he just shoot the three-pointer with a hand in his face and just go in. You know, they weren't missing. And again, like the next time you go to a basketball game, like pick a random player and track his warm-up shots, he's not going to shoot 78.3%. It's just one of those things that, like that NC State game, except in reverse, can't really be explained. You know, another example I can think of is one of Buzz's seasons. Virginia Tech lost at home to UVA by over 30. And Justin Bibbs, this was before you started working for us, so I was covering the games. And Justin Bibbs was the nicest guy in the world. He always had a smile on his face. It's the only time in my life I've ever seen him not smile after a game. Even after losses, he would smile. Not that game. It was an embarrassing bloodbath at home. A few weeks later, Virginia Tech went to Charlottesville and won, right? The Kerry Blackshear shot at the end of the game. So, like, that doesn't make any sense. And that's the nature of basketball to a certain extent. They don't happen very often, but when they do happen, you're like, how in the world did that happen? And there's not really a reasonable explanation for it. Unfortunately, like, I wish Virginia Tech had a result last year that there was no reasonable explanation for. Like, this is the worst timing for that type of game. But it is what it is. You know, when we get to the end of the season and Virginia Tech, if they don't make the NCAA tournament, which they probably won't, we'll look back and it'll be more an issue with the Wake Forest, SMU, and Stanford games than this game, because those teams were beatable. I don't think Florida State was beatable on Saturday. I think they played their A++++ game. And even like a good B or B+ performance from Virginia Tech wouldn't have beaten them. They were that on.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where they're so on. It's just like, yeah, the Hokies should have been better on both ends of the floor, but it was like nothing Virginia Tech was doing was working, and everything Florida State did was. And it's one of those things where you go, okay, well, you got to coach better, you got to execute better. And it's like, yeah, sometimes it's just not your night. Yeah. Yeah, but they've got a big opportunity today to respond, Tuesday against Miami. But yeah, I agree to that last point. You know, if the Hokies don't make the NCAA tournament and it's trending the way they won't, I mean, they've got to do something special here. It will be the, you know, first game of 2026 going to Winston-Salem and losing on a Nate Calmeese three-pointer with like 5 seconds left. It'll be, you know, coming back here and allowing Ibuka Okori to hit a three in your face at the buzzer, and you blew a 13-point lead in the final 3 minutes. It will be you go on the road to SMU and all you have to do is hit a foul shot and inbound the ball with 7 seconds left, and you lose on Boobie Miller's half-court shot. Like, those are the things that have hurt Virginia Tech to this point, and Florida State stings a lot more just because of the nature of it. But if the Hokies, I mean, it'll be a combination of everything, but I put more weight in that just because Hokies were right there. And if you flip one or two of those results, if you've got a quadrant 1 win at Wake or a quadrant 1 win at SMU, your resume looks completely different. But the problem is you've dug yourself this hole. And I said afterwards, like, just the way they played on Saturday, yes, they needed to play better. And it's tough when a Florida State team like that is just on such a roll. But a game like this, it almost writes your NCAA tournament obituary for you. Like, you got to do something really, really special here now to kind of climb out of this hole you just dug.
Every starter for Virginia Tech scored in double digits. They only had 4 bench points the entire game. Let's move on to Joe Lenardi and some bracketology. VT is currently in his next 4 out the NCAA tournament. Seems like it's slipping away right now from the Hokies. What do they have to do with 5 games left? Still 3 quad 1 opportunities as well for the Hokies.
Like they've probably got to win 2 of those 3. And of course, win their 2 remaining home games against Wake Forest and Boston College. That game really hurt Virginia Tech in the efficiency ratings. They dropped about 7 or 8 spots in the net. They dropped 15 spots.
They bought about 10.
They are currently 58th. They were 46.
Oh, they were up to 46? I didn't realize
they dropped about 10 spots. I think they dropped about 10 spots in Ken Palm and 11 in Bartorvik and about 8 to 9 to 10 in the net.
Right. So a game like that crushes you in the efficiency ratings. And again, I go back to those early season games when Virginia Tech was beating teams like Charlotte by like 25 or 30 points. Same thing for George Mason. And they let their foot off the gas in the last 5 minutes of the game. And those games turned out to be, about 8 to 12 point wins instead of 25 point wins. And that could have helped reverse some of the efficiency loss from this past game. It wouldn't have been as drastic, or it would have been as drastic, but the drop would have come from a higher point. Rather than being 46th in the net, Tech might have been 41st or something like that. So you only dropped to 51st or something. And again, they were up to 50th in adjusted defensive efficiency, and they dropped all the way to 65th. Yeah, like you said, you're going to have to do something special down the stretch.
I will read you this paragraph from my story on Saturday about what Virginia Tech has upcoming. The path ahead includes a trip to Miami, where the Hokies are 3-3 under Mike Young, a home game versus Wake Forest, which has beaten Tech 5 of the last 6 times, a visit to North Carolina, and an arena in the Dean Smith Center where it's only won once in 10 tries, which was 2007, a home game versus Boston College, a program Young is just 1-6 against, and an expedition to number 15 Virginia and John Paul Jones Arena, a place that is 5-13 all time.
Right.
It's a tough stretch.
Yikes.
But this is what happens when you miss opportunities earlier in the year, right?
My only prediction in that stretch is that Mike Young will be 2-6 against Boston College now, because they're really, really bad.
Yeah, I mean, but that's also a 9:00 game.
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean, so I look at this, Rob, and I'm just like, the difficult part is you're gonna have to do something special, and winning 2 games, going 2-3 or 3-2 does not cut it, right? Hokies could win 3 of those 5 games, and say they win the 2 home games and then win one of those Q1 games. Okay, they're at 20 wins, but does it really cut it? Probably not. It's one of those things where you're going to be on the outside looking in.
It would give them a puncher's chance depending on what they did in the ACC tournament.
Yes, and that's important.
Right.
But the difficult part is right now they're the 9 seed in the ACC tournament.
Right.
Okay, you beat I forget who they're projected to play.
I actually
SMU maybe
this morning. They're actually currently listed at 10th. If they were to win, they would play Louisville in their first game.
They're tied with Cal.
They're tied for 10th.
They're tied for 9th.
Oh, 9th.
Oh,
they're tied with Cal for 9th.
Right.
And they're the 9 seed because they beat Cal head to head. But okay. So beating SMU on a neutral floor would be a quadrant 1 win. Okay.
Are they top 50 now?
In the net?
Yeah.
SMU is.
Yeah. SMU is.
So you go down to Charlotte. If you can beat SMU, that's a quadrant 1 win.
That's the game we want right there. I
don't know, because then you play Duke.
I don't know. Well, but you need top 50 wins. Like you can't go in there and beat Syracuse in the first round. That doesn't get you anything.
Yeah.
You
need to play if Virginia Tech wanted an opportunity in the ACC tournament, it would have to come down. You would have to beat one of those top 8 teams essentially. You'd have to get a matchup with one of those top 8 teams and beat them.
Right. I mean, so like if you can win one of those 3 games on the road, win your 2 at home, you can go into the ACC tournament with 4 quad 1 wins. And then if you beat SMU or somebody like that in the first round, then that's 5 quad 1 wins.
Yeah.
So that gives you a chance.
Call me crazy. Right now, it feels like the best chance for the Hokies is they land at that 10th seed and play Wake Forest, and then the winner of that game would play Louisville. And I feel like that's a winnable
I'd much rather
chance.
play SMU.
Yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, a Wake win wouldn't do you any good because it's Wake. Like, you need quad 1 wins.
You're talking about the 10 plays a 15. So you play Notre Dame.
Oh, yeah. You play
that doesn't
Notre
do
Dame,
it. That
and then
doesn't
you go into Louisville. Yeah.
That doesn't do you any.
Right, and I think Tech has a better chance of beating SMU.
Yeah,
than
Tech should have beaten SMU.
Right.
Tech was 10 seconds away from beating SMU on its home floor and got blown out by 20 at Louisville.
Right.
Like, it's...
Does beating SMU and then playing Duke and losing, though, does that just wipe that off the board?
No, like
I mean,
quad
everybody's
going
to
to
lose to
everybody's
going to lose to Duke. But I mean, but it's tough here, right? Because you put yourself, Joe Lenardi's got Tech in the next 4 out.
Next 4 out.
I mean, you're basically 6 or 7 or 8 spots off the bubble right now, and like. You have to do something crazy because everybody else is in the same boat. Everybody else is trying to get these
7
big
spots off the bubble.
7 spots, and list the teams in front of them. If you have it up, okay, you don't have it up. So the tough part here is that Miami, the team that the Hokies play tonight, just swept NC State and North Carolina last week. Right. Miami's a really good team that's only lost 5 times this year.
I have them if you want to hear them.
Assuming you beat Wake and Boston College at home. North Carolina, a team that right now is dealing without Caleb Wilson and is dealing without Henry Visar, but still looked pretty good the other day against Pitt. And it's North Carolina on the road. That North Carolina team, granted a complete team, just beat Duke. And then you go to Virginia, and Virginia's playing really, really well. Now, Virginia looked... beatable against Florida State, but at the same time you're playing in JPJ, and that's final game in the regular season. So it's one of these things where it's like you've backed yourself into a corner and you have to win now. Who are the teams ahead of the Hokies on the bubble in terms of first 4 out and next 4 out?
Okay, so Missouri, Ohio State, New Mexico, and Cal make up your first 4 out. Your next 4 out is VCU, Seton Hall, Virginia Tech, West Virginia.
And some of those teams,
next Seton Hall only has maybe like 1 quad.
Yeah, I don't think Ohio State has one. No. But some of these teams have better overall resumes. I mean, everybody's resume is different. The tough part here is it's apples to oranges essentially, and that's just to have an opportunity to get in. We didn't even talk about the last 4 in. So the Hokies have work to do, obviously, and it's one of those things where, like we talked about earlier, Chris, when you have setbacks earlier in the season, when you lose to Stanford at home, it impacts your resume down the line. And it's not the, oh, man, you lost to Florida State. It's the, oh, man, like, imagine if Virginia Tech beat SMU and has one more Quadrant 1 win right now. Right. Imagine if Virginia Tech beat Wake Forest and has another Quadrant 1 win right now. It's like you're maybe 1 or 2 or 3 spots higher. You can withstand the Florida State loss a little bit more. So it's a combination of everything. And if they get Tyler Johnson back and they're more complete, maybe they can win one of these 3 road games, but he's not playing today. So it's a really, really tough position, and you're on the bubble again.
Yeah, so let's stay to that point. Tyler Johnson has missed nearly 2 months now. Do we have any updates? Like you mentioned, he's not playing against Miami, but is there even a timeline for his return yet?
We didn't get a chance to talk to Mike Young on Monday because of their travel down to Miami. I think it's one of these things where it's a broken bone and he's rehabbing, and they think he's coming back at a certain time, and he's taking longer than they anticipate. And it's hard to give an exact time frame. And maybe you get him back on Saturday. Mike Young said on Thursday on Tech Talk Live that he had a green light and he was back practicing again. So how long does it take him to get up to speed? They play Tuesday, so maybe you think maybe he's back on Saturday. We'll see. We talked about this last time, Chris. The tough part is the Hokies have missed 31 games now by their core 9 players this year. 31 games. That's
a whole season.
That's abnormal. Yeah. And you played 26 games, and your top 9 players have missed a combined 31. And Tyler Johnson's been out for 13 or 14. Toby Lawal missed 9 or 10. Yeah. I mean, it's just, but at the same time, you still had opportunities to win games. So that's kind of the situation.
So ultimately, when we were talking about the team in the preseason, and people asked, are they an NCAA tournament team? I said, I think they'll be there or thereabouts, which means I thought they'd be basically a bubble team. And that was assuming that everybody stayed healthy, because you don't make these predictions saying, well, I think Tyler Johnson's going to miss this many games, and I think so-and-so is going to get hurt at this point, and I'm going to make my predictions based on you make your
Tyler Johnson hasn't played a single ACC
game, right?
Yeah.
So you make those picks based on everybody staying healthy for everybody's team. So I thought they would be a bubble team, which is what they are. And I thought it would come down to, the randomness of the committee and what they value this year as to whether Tech would make it or not. So they're actually better than I thought they would be, because when Toby Lawal got hurt, I basically thought it was over. I didn't think they had a chance. Especially after Johnson got hurt and they were missing both of them. I was like, nah.
I mean, it's crazy to think that they beat UVA.
Right. Well, they've beaten 2 of the top 3 seeds in the ACC tournament, right, as of now.
Which shows that they're capable.
Right.
But it's doing it on a night in, night out basis. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. When we project, I think this is an NCAA tournament caliber roster.
Yeah. I know you look at the women's team, who we'll talk about later and who most likely will make the NCAA tournament. What's your take, David? Who's the Toby Lawal and who's the Tyler Johnson of the women's team?
In what context? Just
their versions of Toby Lawal and Tyler Johnson.
Interesting. I mean, well, it's a little bit different roster makeup,
That's
but
what
I think
mean,
Kyla Freelon is probably the Toby Lawal comparison, because
Kyla Freelon.
I would say Mel Daly would probably be your Tyler Johnson, or maybe Layla Wells.
Maybe like some Suffren for Tyler Johnson.
Take out those 2. Is the women's team definitely in the NCAA tournament right now?
No.
Right.
I mean, it's not. If you take out, say, Kyla Freelon and Samaya Suffren, this team is probably nowhere close to the NCAA tournament.
So, I mean, injuries matter.
Yeah.
And they've had a tough shake this year.
So
they could have done better, but at the same time, everybody could always do better, right? Duke could do better. They shouldn't have blown a big lead against UNC. What's that?
They blew a 16-point lead to Texas Tech, too.
That's right. They sure did. Yep. So so as Nick said, they blew a 16-point lead against Texas Tech, which they probably shouldn't have done. So everybody could do better, right? But not everybody has those types of injuries, and not everybody loses one of their assistants after the preseason practice starts, and you have to bring in a brand new assistant, and then you lose your GM 3 or 4 games into the season. There's been so much turnover in this program, both on staff and the roster, since practice started, right? It's one thing to lose players and coaches in the offseason. That's normal. But to lose them after practice starts, that's not something anybody else has had to deal with. The combination of injuries and coaching losses.
Yeah. Well, I would also put in perspective like this. Virginia Tech basketball being on the bubble, and this is kind of what Tech basketball is. Given where Virginia Tech stands in the ACC in terms of resources and the investment into men's basketball, this is kind of where Virginia Tech is.
Well, they're better. They're actually punching above their weight because the numbers released by Virginia Tech in that Board of Visitors meeting this past August clearly showed that Virginia Tech, amongst public schools in the ACC, was dead last in men's basketball investment, and women's basketball was first in the ACC. In women's basketball,
and for perspective, women's basketball is less investment. By that I mean
less money, but compared relative to everyone else.
Correct. Right. Like ACC schools are overall investing. The dollar figure invested in women's basketball is not as much as the men. Virginia Tech has invested a lot in women's basketball. Like expenses for women's basketball for Virginia Tech, according to Whit Babcock's presentation in August, were the most in the ACC
amongst public schools.
Public schools. But in men's basketball, where the investment is higher, Virginia Tech was dead last.
The only school under $10 million in investment.
And you look at what happened last season with the roster. I think the only school that Virginia Tech really had a payroll above last year was Boston College.
Boston College. Yeah.
Now, it was a down ACC, but the Hokies still won 8 games. But I say that to just put in perspective that if you had numbers in front of you, I know this is kind of hard to conceptualize, but if you had numbers in front of you of what every team's payroll was, like Virginia men's basketball's payroll is probably close to double what Virginia Tech men's basketball's payroll is. I mean, there was a Jakari White was set to come to Virginia Tech, and Virginia, he didn't even take a visit to Virginia, and Virginia swooped in and offered him more money than Virginia Tech had offered him or anybody else had offered him, and he's at Virginia now.
And he's coming off their bench.
Correct. It's one of these things where the Hokies, this is the Hokies situation. You have to invest all of your money and resources into football. And everyone around here knows that. And I think everyone would agree that you have to invest in football. The Hokies don't necessarily have a giant basketball history. They've been to 13 NCAA tournaments. 6 of those have come in the last decade between Buzz Williams and Mike Young. This is not historically a men's basketball school. Now, it shows that you can make the NCAA tournament when everything goes the right way. However, comparative to everyone else in the league, the Hokies are a bottom 5 job, and they have bottom 5 resources. And you're in the NCAA tournament conversation. I say that to, again, put in perspective that regardless of who the head coach is, you will, from a certain standpoint, be playing Moneyball with your roster.
Right.
Because if Virginia Tech's roster is around $5 million and the Louisvilles and NC States and Virginias of the league have $10 million rosters, like there's only so much you can do to compete with them. Right? Duke and Carolina are way up there. But the numbers will only continue to go up. The investment that it requires, the payroll it requires to have a good roster will only continue to go up. And unless you are receiving a giant investment, it is going to be tough to make up that gap. You can do it by coaching and by moneyballing your way to doing it. And we've seen the Hokies beat teams with better payrolls this year. But at the same time, there are going to be times where you suffer. And the point I'm trying to make is that regardless of who the coach is, this is Virginia Tech's situation as far as men's basketball goes. And being in the conversation is kind of the reality of it, right? If you are in the NCAA tournament conversation, if you have a chance to make the NCAA tournament every year, that's good. And some years you'll make it, and some years you won't. And Tech's had some bad luck these past couple years with injuries, like really bad luck. If this team is healthy, this team makes the NCAA tournament this year.
Sure.
But there's no guarantee you are healthy.
Right.
But that's sports. And it's one of these things where say Mike Young retires and the Hokies bring in a new coach. Well, can the new coach moneyball their way and build a better roster and do more with less than Mike Young? Maybe, maybe not. It's a question we don't know the answer to. but this is the Hokies situation. You are what you are, and you're not just all of a sudden going to have a giant injection of money, unless something surprising happens, where all of a sudden you are a top half funded team in the league. You're towards the bottom. And I don't think fans understand enough, Chris, this situation.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think when you're Virginia Tech, like and I wrote this before the season, so it's not like a hindsight thing for me. You shoot for the best 8-man rotation that you can get and hope that you stay healthy. And Virginia Tech has a good 8-man rotation when everybody's healthy, but not everybody's been healthy for large enough chunks of the season.
And I think the only guy I look at the roster and question in terms of investment recruitment in the offseason is Pasha. Mm-hmm. Isaiah Pasha, who, granted, he's played a little bit more in the last 2 games, right. and I think Mike Young might be trying to keep his guys a little bit more fresh. But, Isaiah Pasha is kind of the one guy that they brought in, they were really high on, and, he hasn't kind of met expectations. But everybody else, they've kind of been what they wanted out of them.
The one thing I would change if I had it to do over again is Virginia Tech lacks a center who can jump, for lack of a better word. Whenever the ball gets in the post, it's too easy for players to go up without having their shot altered, unless Lawal comes from on a weak side block or something like that. But the verticals for Tech's 3 centers, they can't challenge shots. Like Dorn never blocks any shots, even though he's tall, because he doesn't get off the floor. Right, and Gerdak's a really skilled offensive player, and so is Hansberry, but they're not great athletes. So it's a little bit hard for Virginia Tech to defend in the post because of that. So that'd be the one thing I would change, is rather than taking Dorn. Like if you're going to get an unskilled center,
do an unskilled center that can jump.
Right, I'd rather have a 6'9" guy who can jump than a 7-foot guy who can't.
Yeah,
right?
And I think you look at I don't know his name, but he's UVA's center that comes off the bench. It starts with an O.
I think a great example of what you guys are looking for is William Kyle for Syracuse, their starting center. He can jump out of the gym. His free throw form is
there's your Syracuse mention.
Disgusting.
Yep. Yeah. There's your Geo Heater.
Well, yeah, but he alters
he
shots.
Blocks shots. He's great interior. It's basically the perfect player.
Yeah, I was the UVA player. I forget his last name, but it starts with a O and a U essentially. I feel bad for not knowing it off the top of my head or not butchering it, but I mean, he's essentially UVA's center backup.
Yenso?
Yeah, like backup center or a guy who factors into the rotation, and he's not much of an offensive player, but he jumps and he blocks shots, and he's really, really good defensively. But it goes back to this, the roster construction, right? You've got a set amount of money, and you do with it what you hope. Hey, here's our vision for the roster, and you go out and get guys to fill it. And I think Mike Young did a pretty good job constructing this roster, but you also don't have them in the back of your head. All right, what happens when we have injuries?
Right.
What happens when Tyler Johnson and Toby Lawal are out for a combined 4 months? It's like, okay, well, we got to slide Amani Hansberry here, and we got to rely on Christian Gerdak to go here, and Antonio Dorn's been out for a couple games, and it's just. And I don't want this to come across as an excuse, because it's not. Because they should have won a lot more games than they have. They should have beaten Stanford and SMU and Wake Forest. But this is also perspective, because I saw people are always going to be vocal, especially on social media, and there are people on the social media on our message boards that are saying there needs to be a coaching change. And the point I'm trying to make is that regardless of who the coach is, this is the situation. You are going to have to be in this situation every single year as far as roster goes, in terms of how you construct it. You're not just going to be able to go out and buy a top 5 team in the ACC. It doesn't work like that, because North Carolina and Duke and NC State and Virginia and Louisville will outspend you every single year, and Miami and Clemson. Like, this is the situation. And so it's just difficult, because it's like, on paper, when you have such a talented roster, when you construct it so well, and it's just like things don't go your way, you have bad luck, you miss opportunities, it's just really hard to make up, because it's like you got a window. Like this is a 1 year window with this team for Virginia Tech, and you're probably not going to capitalize on it.
Yeah.
Well, let's preview the Hurricanes. Miami's currently 20-5. They're 9-3 in the ACC, and they actually have the largest win turnaround in basketball since last season, going from 7 wins to 20. So Jai Lucas has fully turned this team around, and the Hokies have a tough test in Coral Gables tonight.
If I'm voting Coach of the Year today, I'm voting Jay Lucas Coach of the Year. I
would agree with
he's
that.
phenomenal. Duke assistant, was on John Shire's staff, and it's interesting that the disparity in the ACC. NC State and Virginia went out and got Will Wade and Ryan Odom, 2 proven guys, McNeese and UMBC, taking teams to the tournament. Florida State and Miami went out and got Luke Laux and Jay Lucas. And Luke Laux, I know their record's not as great, but he's doing a really good job. Yeah. And he's a very intelligent guy, and he's going to have that program rolling when they get players. And Jay Lucas at Miami, they are 20-5. They are really good. I mean, their 5 losses are the only time they have lost on the road this season. Miami is at home this season. They lost to Clemson. They lost, I think, earlier in the year to BYU. They lost maybe to NC State, but they only have 5 losses. They have played really good basketball, and they don't play Duke this year, which is the caveat of the ACC schedule, which is very strange.
So how does Tech play like Wake Forest twice and they don't play Pitt at all?
Yeah, that's Miami's. Miami plays. I forget who Miami plays twice. Miami plays Florida State twice, I think, and somebody
makes sense. Yeah.
And somebody else, but doesn't play. But doesn't play Duke.
Right.
It's like, oh, that's just weird. But Miami's losses this year: Florida, BYU, Clemson, Florida State, and Cal.
Right.
Those are the 5 losses. Lost at home to Cal, and that was at the buzzer.
As well as Florida
Lost
State.
at home to Florida State. That was at the buzzer. Sorry, the only road loss was Clemson.
Their game against NC State was wild on Saturday.
And they should have lost. They should have lost that, but they came back and won. They're top 50 in adjusted offense and defense, as Nick shows here. They are very, very talented.
When you're top 50 in both those, you're going to win plenty of games.
Yeah, they're balanced. They've got Trey Donaldson, the point guard. He was formerly at Michigan. He's just very, very, very shifty. Does not come off the floor. Really high assist rate. They have a guy in Ernest Uday at 6'11". His offensive rating, he's 6'11", 266. His offensive rating is 133.7. That's 37th in the country. Malik Renault, I think is how you pronounce it. He is their go-to guy, and he has been very, very efficient. He's shooting 60% on 2-point shots this year. He's got an offensive rating of 120, essentially. They are very balanced. They shoot 56% on effective. Their effective field goal percentage is 56%. That's 28th in the country. They are terrific on the glass. 17th in offensive rebounding percentage at 37%. And they also shoot a lot of free throws. They get to the foul line. They rebound. They do all the little nitty-gritty things behind the scenes. And Virginia Tech has a tough challenge on its hands. Miami's really good. And you think about where the Canes were before. The Canes had money under Jim Larinaga.
They just gave it to Lynn Kidd.
Wrong idea.
Yeah.
And it just was not a great. They had talent on that roster. No, Nigel Pack wasn't greatly constructed. But the year before that, they went to the Final Four.
Right.
When they had Nigel Pack and Isaiah Wong, and Patrick Beverly, I think. Maybe I'm thinking. But they had some.
Isaiah Wong played there for 10 years.
A different Beverly. I forget his first name. But Patrick Beverly's an NBA player. But Miami's going to be really, really good for years to come under Lucas. And this is kind of just a start. And they have kind of gone out and gotten exact guys that fit his mold and what he wants to do. Yes.
Beverly.
Thank you. So this is going to be a really good test for the Hokies. And probably empty arena in Miami, but at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night. But if the Hokies want any opportunity to go dancing, this is a game you got to win.
Well, we're on the edge of our seat waiting to see what Virginia Tech can do tonight against Miami. And luckily for us, this podcast is brought to you by Tech Solutions. This Tech Sideline video comes to you from the Tech Solutions studio. Tech Solutions, located in Arlington, Virginia, provides specialized CETA engineering and financial advisory services to the Department of Defense and Intelligence community. Based on the philosophy of only hiring the best of the best, we pride ourselves on being customer and mission focused. A Washington Post top workplace winner in 2024 and 2025, we're always looking for talented and motivated individuals to join our team. Visit techsolutionsva.com/careers to learn more. That is techsolutionsva.com/careers. So now we get to flip the script and take a quick look at Megan Duffy's squad. The women's basketball team is currently 20-7. They are 10-5 in the ACC, 42nd in the net rankings, and ranked 6th in the ACC. It was a successful road trip to California for the women's basketball team. 2 double-digit wins over Cal and Stanford. A pretty solid week overall for Megan Duffy's squad.
Right now, I said Jay Lucas would be my ACC Coach of the Year on the men's side. Megan Duffy has a shot to be the ACC Coach of the Year on the women's side. Now, if Carol Lawson and Duke go 18-0, yeah, she'll probably get it.
Especially after starting 3-9.
Yeah, or 3-6, somewhere in there.
Something
Duke has been phenomenal, and it's crazy to think the Hokies got them in game one, and it's like, oh, who's this Duke team? And now they're looking like a top 10 team in the country. But Megan Duffy, she is doing such a good job this year with this team. I've been so impressed. They've a couple different times this year faced setbacks. They lose back-to-back, JMU, BYU, and they bounce back with a win streak in November, December. They lose they lost back-to-back games to Miami and Louisville in January to open 2026, and they bounce back with a 7-game win streak or 8-game win streak. They lose back-to-back to 2 really good teams in Notre Dame and NC State. A Notre Dame game they should have won. And they go on the road on the West Coast. They go out there for basically a week and sweep the Cal and Stanford, the California schools. Duke and Louisville, 6 teams have gone out there this year. Only 3 of them have swept. Hokies, Duke, and Louisville. That says a lot about this team and kind of the mental fortitude. And I think they're playing really hard right now. They're playing with a lot of energy. They're playing really tough and rugged. And Cal and Stanford are two different teams, 2 different games. Stanford is Q1 win, but the Cardinals been down. They lost Nunu Agara. She's been out the last 7 games or so, and they've kind of slid a little bit. They lost 6 of their last 7. A little bit different for Cal. Cal has started slow, been on the incline, and Lulu Twidale, I think is how you pronounce it, she's their leading scorer, and she's been fantastic as of late. And they had won before playing the Hokies. They beat UVA. They had won 7 of their last 8, I think, and Hokies went in there and took it to them.
I think people forget that before Stanford joined the ACC, when Tara Vanderveer was their head coach, they were one of the top teams in women's basketball.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they've fallen off, slightly, which
hard to replace a legend.
Yes, very difficult. But yeah, I mean, Stanford's a historic program, and both of those teams are good. Stanford's in the NCAA tournament picture right now. Cal is on the bubble, and the Hokies went and got 2 quality wins. And I thought they were the better team in both games for the majority of the game. And that's hard to do. Just, you're playing at somebody else's place, time change and whatnot. And, I look at that Stanford game on Thursday. It's a late game. They're playing at 10 Eastern. And they're down 34-32 at halftime. And they came out in the second half and just punched Stanford in the mouth, forced a timeout. And in that Cal game on Sunday, they're up. They had that giant run to end the first half. They went on a 10-0 run. 8 of those points came from Samaya Safran, and they go into half up 33-29. And, it's neck and neck for a bit. And then in the fourth quarter, they have another 10-0 run. And their defense in both of these games, their defense, I mean, they are a top 25 defensive team this year in adjusted defense, according to Bartorvik. And they have been so good at times defensively where if they just get a little bit from their offense at times, it lifts them so much. And I thought you saw them kind of hold serve against both Stanford and Cal this weekend. 2 huge wins. And you set yourself up for potentially, a really good opportunity. Last couple games of the year, ACC tournament, NCAA tournament. I mean, they have played this exactly how they needed to play this.
I think when you go on take a West Coast trip like that, you'd be happy with a 1-1 record coming back, and especially with winnable games ahead of you and more quad 1 win opportunities. I think you'd be happy with that. Coming home 2-0 is outstanding, especially when you add another quad 1 win to your resume. I thought both those games were competitive, but in each one of those games, like David said, there was one point in the game where Virginia Tech just took control of it, and I thought that was just a sign of a mature team. I think, and I think that bodes well for how their season's going to win. I think. Obviously, they'd be in the tournament if the season ended today. I think it would take a lot. They'd have to really blow it down the stretch for them not to go. But I think it's safe to say they're going to be an NCAA tournament team at this point.
I think we've seen Karis Baker had 24 the other day and looked really, really good. And she was against Stanford, and she was pretty good against Cal. Had 10 points, but. The beauty of this team, I think, is somebody different is kind of stepping up at different points in time.
Earlier this season, everything seemed to be on Wenzel because the players around her were just consistent. And I think there's been more consistency around her as the season has progressed. And she's played better as a result.
Yeah. She didn't have her best shooting out there. She was 4 for 18 against Stanford.
Right. If she had gone 4 for 18 in one of those early season games, Tech would have lost.
Yeah. She was 4 for 18 against Stanford and 2 for 10 against Cal from the floor, but she was 4 for 9 from 3, and she shot 12 for 13 from the foul line, including 10 for 10 against Cal, right? Finding ways to continue to be productive, even when what I thought were some good looks weren't falling. She didn't turn the ball over against Stanford. She did a little bit against Cal, but you are seeing other players step up around her. I think Kyla Freelon, as of late, she struggled in that Notre Dame game. She bounced back with a great performance against NC State, and then played really well out west. Got a little bit banged up against Cal, but came back out there and she had 12 and 10 against Cal. Against Stanford, she was 7 for 12 from the floor and had 15 and 5. Samaya Suffren's been really, really good. Mackenzie Nelson and Mel Daly stepped up the other day. Even with the production you're getting from players off the bench, Anaya Trent coming in and getting 2 or 3 steals and a block, and it's like you are seeing the depth show, and they did not have this depth. You didn't see it earlier in the year when Karis Baker and Carly Wenzel were off. Yeah, you might get 10 points from Kyla Freelon, but Samaya Suffren was not doing the thing she did the other night when she had a career-high 19 against Cal. So they have continued to kind of evolve as a group and continued to get really good contributions from other people. And that's what you have to do to win games. And also, when you're playing team defense as well as they are, I thought they really kind of took away what Cal and Stanford wanted to do. Cal's got a 6'6" center in Sakima Walker. They want to lob balls in, kind of play a high-low game, and lob balls in towards the basket. And the Hokies knew that, and they took that away. And you saw a lot of times where they batted passes away. Cal had 22 turnovers. They've done a really good job of playing to teams' tendencies. And it's actually kind of a shame that they didn't get that Notre Dame win, because that would have been Q1.
Oh, that would have locked it up for sure by now.
Yeah, but I really like just kind of how they've played in the ACC. I talked a little bit earlier about the ACC from a men's perspective, where where the Hokies stand. The Hokies are well funded on the women's side. They have one of the biggest budgets of public schools, And if you look at the women's standings, there are 4 or 5 schools at the bottom of the conference that do not invest in women's basketball. You don't find that in men's basketball. Like Boston College does not invest anything in women's, does a little bit in men's. So like the gulf between the very, very bottom and the mid-tier is large, and then the upper tier. But the Hokies are a solid mid-tier to upper-tier program, and can be. And I think a lot of people were wondering after last year, where they were the first team out, how they would respond, and questioning the roster construction a little bit. And at times this year, it did not look like the roster construction was the right way. But the right players have stepped up, and you are seeing them kind of play really connected, really well-rounded basketball right now. And as a result, they're in the tournament as it stands, and I think they will be. And not just as an 11 seed, but as a 10 seed. I mean, they're in a really, really good spot, and a lot of credit has to go to Megan Duffy and the coaching staff, and also the players for their faith. They faced setbacks a couple times, and they've responded very well.
Well, UNC comes to town on Thursday, number 22 in the nation. With a win, Virginia Tech actually has a chance to jump into the top 4 of the ACC, and then they'd earn a double bye for the tournament.
This is a huge opportunity. Q1 game at home. It reminds me a little bit of when Louisville visited last year. And Nick just pulled up the ACC women's basketball standings. The Hokies are tied with UVA for 6th. Carolina's tied with NC State for 4th. The Hokies still have an outside shot. Like, if they win out, there's a very good chance they can get a double bye in the league. Syracuse is still in there at 3rd, and that's somebody else. Coach Jack, she's done a terrific job. She's like right now, I would probably say her, Duffy, and Carol Lawson in running for ACC Coach of the Year. But Syracuse has NC State still, right? And some of those top teams, Carolina still has Duke. Some of those top teams are going to eat each other alive. We could be talking, if Virginia Tech can handle business the rest of the way, a really good defensive team against Carolina comes to your house. They're top 20 defensive too. They had won 8 straight before losing to Duke on Sunday. If you can handle business, if you can get a huge win, which in my opinion, if they could beat Carolina on Thursday, that would be the biggest win of the Duffy era to date. If you can close it out, you got a Georgia Tech team that is at 11th currently in the ACC standings, and then you close against Virginia on the road. I mean, you've got a really good opportunity to end the regular season on a high, and really not just like stamp, but like forcefully like stamp your admission to the NCAA tournament and be higher than a 10 seed, be like a 8 or a 9 potentially, or even higher, depending on what you're able to do. I mean, if they finish, they didn't really play anybody huge in the non-conference. They played some solid teams. But if they were to finish, like say they won 3 games to end the year, they finished 13-5 in the ACC and 23-7. I mean, you're talking about this group being closer to the 7 line,
probably,
than being on the 10 line.
Especially if they can win a game in the ACC tournament.
Correct. And a double bye would go a long way.
It would. And if you look at that, who's going to finish in the top 2 seeds. But everybody between number 3 and number 9 has between 4 and 6 losses. So that's one big old jumbled mess. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out.
And of the teams in there, the only 2 teams in there that the Hokies did not beat, say between 3 and 10, are NC State and Notre Dame. They beat Clemson. They beat Virginia. They beat Cal. They beat and they got North Carolina, and they beat Syracuse. Yeah. So you have set yourself up for a really good tiebreaker situation, I think.
Especially if you can beat North Carolina.
Yeah. I mean, if they, again, I'm very excited to see what the crowd looks like. It's a 6:00 game on Thursday. Excited to see what that crowd looks like, because this is an opportunity for a marquee win, and Virginia Tech can win this game. I mean, Virginia Tech has played well enough to beat a lot of these teams towards the top, but you got to play a complete game. They were off a little bit at times against NC State and Notre Dame, where NC State, they were off for a quarter. Notre Dame, they were off for a couple possessions. But if you continue to take care of the ball and play good defense, you will have opportunities to win these games. And if they play the way they did against Stanford and Cal, they come in and finish the season like that, where there isn't really a lull and there's a stretch where they take it to them. I mean, this Carolina team, if you rewind to last year at this time, when the Hokies were scrapping and clawing their way, trying to get into the NCAA tournament, they went down to Chapel Hill and should have beaten Carolina. They led in the fourth quarter of that game and ended up losing. But they win that game, they're in the NCAA tournament. So they're more than capable to win this game, to win out. I'm really excited to see. I mean, as much as we talked about the men, and man, it's going to be tough because they're probably not going to make the NCAA tournament. You look at this team and they're, barring something ridiculous happening, they're going to be in the NCAA tournament and not just, just scraping their way in.
They'd have to lose out to not make it.
Well, so we can dive a little deeper into it. According to Charlie Cream, the Hokies are currently a 10 seed in the NCAA tourney with 3 games left in the year. Is it safe to say the Hokies avoid any major upsets to get in? They're currently one of the 4 teams that is the last 4 bye. They're the 3rd team in that slate. It's Mississippi State, Villanova, Virginia Tech, and Princeton that are the last 4 byes.
I would say you beat Georgia Tech, you're in the tournament. I mean, you just can't lose at home game to Georgia Tech. And I think, Rob, we've seen Duffy and this team, they've taken care of the games they've needed to take care of this year. The one result you probably would like to flip, well, that's a broad statement. The one result, the one game that they probably should not have lost was Miami. As far as an inferior team, Miami's kind of below Notre Dame, around like 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th in the league. But Miami also had a terrific end to that game. Well, the Hokies flipped the script and went and beat Clemson. So I kind of consider those games canceled out. But they've basically, in the ACC, they've basically handled business. They've beaten the teams they were supposed to beat, with the exception of that one. Maybe you would like that Notre Dame game back, but they've played really well. And if they don't slip up against Georgia Tech, yeah, it'd be nice to beat Carolina. Yeah, it'd be nice to go on the road and beat UVA, but I don't know that those are expected. I say if you can take one of those 2 games, that would be awesome. UVA has looked vulnerable. I thought the Hokies took it to them earlier when they met in Castle Coliseum. So the opportunities are there, man. Don't underestimate this team. I think they're playing really, really good basketball. And if they could somehow sneak into a double bye position in the ACC tournament, that would be massive. I mean, that you can't overstate that. Right now, like getting a single bye would be good, being a 5, 6, 7 seed, but getting a double bye, man. I mean, that would really go a long way and kind of show like, hey, like Virginia Tech's here to play. I mean, you finished top 4 in the league. That is impressive, and they have the opportunity to do so. I'm not saying they will, because it's going to take beating 2 really good teams in UVA and UNC, but they can do it.
Well, all right. That'll do it for us this week on the TSL Basketball Show. Before we get out of here, what's coming up on TSL this week, guys?
Oh, I'm going to do an article looking at like the last 4 or 5 years at Penn State when Ty Howell's been there as the tight ends coach, like how often Penn State uses their tight ends as opposed to their wide receivers, tight end snaps, basically, how many tight end heavy formations they use, because I know people are curious about that, because Virginia Tech's probably going to go 3 deep at tight end this year, and that should be a position of strength. And I'll also do an update on scheduled official visits for football. Got more as time goes by, more and more guys will schedule official visits for the spring and summer. So I'll do an update on that as well. That's my plan for the week, plus a Q&A.
Basketball stuff, a lot of basketball stuff.
David, you're hoping for Nashville for the women's team, because that's
so they're projected to go to Nashville right now. First of all, I would love to see Jake Lyman. And second of all, I would love to go to Nashville.
Yeah.
Nashville would be great if they ended up in that regional. But the women are playing they played their way into the tournament. The men, not so much. Interested to see what the men can do tonight. I'll have a preview of Miami out later today. Maybe by the time you listen to it. Tomorrow is Wednesday. The women play Thursday. I think tomorrow I'll run a women's preview. both game, no travel for a while for me because the men and women are both at home this weekend against Wake and Georgia Tech, respectively. And then they're both off next week, which is very weird. They both have an open date during the week next week.
You should go on vacation.
Oof. I don't know if what would we do here? Like if I just like took a week off?
There's no articles to write about. So.
No, I think I'm actually going to do a basketball Q&A next week because they go from both playing Saturday, Sunday to both playing Saturday, Sunday at Carolina at UVA. The women close the year. The men go to Chapel Hill. So that's a good week for a basketball Q&A. And then after that, it's the ACC Women's Basketball Tournament. So it's going to get real busy here real quick, but lots of basketball stuff from me. I know Andy will have some football stuff too. And we'll have Talking with Teal, I believe, on Thursday. And there's also a special podcast coming.
Yeah, we've got John Sheff tomorrow at 10 a.m. in person. That'll be great. Talk with Teal Thursday, Friday, Q&A Friday.
Big sweep for baseball to start the season.
Baseball. Yeah. And then poor softball, man. They were dealing with the flu, just a lot of crap going on. And then they didn't even get a chance to get revenge on Michigan State on Sunday because it got canceled due to weather. Just a mess of a weekend, and fortunate they even split it.
Yeah, but baseball looked good, and I thought wrestling went toe-to-toe with Oklahoma State for the most part and got a big win over North Carolina.
Well, all right. On the YouTube channel, we have a Friday Q&A with myself and Chris Coleman and a defensive and offensive positional breakdown.
That was last week. That was last week.
Yeah, I'm saying to go check that on the page. Be sure to check those out if you want more on football or whatever is going on in the world of Blacksburg. Be sure to follow us on all socials at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Tech Sideline. And that will do it for us this week on the TSL Basketball Show. A big thanks to Chris Coleman and David Cunningham on set. Nick Brown behind the scenes. I'm Robert Bateman, and we'll see you guys next time.